Well, welcome everyone. We'd like to thank Jason for taking time to be able to jump on this quick interview for questions asked by the American Fork Citizen readers. Jason is running for the seat 7 of the Aspen Peak School District Board. And Jason, thanks for being here.
You bet. My pleasure.
Format we have down is 15 questions asked by the readers of the American Fork Citizen. You'll have a minute to be able to respond. We get close to that in a minute. We'll have you just wrap up your final thoughts on the question. And by no means feel like you got to take the full minute. Sometimes the best
Sure.
answers are the shortest ones that we can give, right? So, with that, are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All righty. So the first question is, what professional backgrounds and skill sets do you believe are most valuable for school board members to bring effective governance to the new school district?
It's a good question. I think one of the most valuable skill sets to bring is curiosity and communication. And then probably a third would be a kind of a collaborative spirit, right? If you're curious and you have some communication skill and the desire to collaborate, you're going to be a good teammate, right? You're going to want to see perspectives. You're going to want to find out what different people have to say about the topic. And then if you could communicate and collaborate, I think you're going to, I think those are three just critical skill sets that a board member could bring. What was it seemed like there were two parts.
Just the backgrounds and skill sets that you think are the most valuable.
Oh, and then a background. I don't know if there's any specific background because it's good to have parents on a school board. It's good to have business professionals on a school board, but I also think it's good to have educators on a school board. But I think most importantly, whatever your background is that you learned, right? You learned as much as you could about how to do that well, and we're just kind of demonstrated this idea of I want to keep learning and growing my ability to do things well. So.
Okay, great. Next question is, what is your position on on what was the proposed tax increment increase to fund facilities and capital expenditures, and how would you evaluate future tax policy decisions?
Well, that is probably the $10 million question, right? That's on everybody's mind. I think that's a lot of what drove um, people wanting to consider it's the split in the first place is our money being used for my area's needs. And I think a lot of areas were thinking it wasn't being used for my community needs. It might have been being used for greater community needs, but I think a lot of people were curious if it was being used for their direct community needs. So as far as what would happen in the future, um, each school board is going to have to say these are our top priorities. And you at Rob Smith, who's our current interim superintendent, I worked with him for years and years, and he would say you can't have everything you want, but you can have some things you want, right? And you just have to determine what are those some things. We're not going to have it. We're not going to be able to do everything we want. So what are the things we do want to do, and then make sure try to line those up, say what they are, and then chase those hard in order of preference.
Okay. Next question is, what do you see as the most crucial operational gaps that need to be addressed as we separate from Alpine School District, and how should we prioritize filling them?
Okay, operational gaps. I think it'll be interesting because you have you have a set of students and teachers that need our full attention for the next 18, 20 months, right? And at the same time, you have three districts that are going to want to try to take advantage of some of those great professionals that are currently in the field to start building these three new districts, right? And so I think one of the gaps that we need to carefully manage is how do we um, not only allow those current professionals to serve our current students and our current staff as best as possible, and still give them some time if they are highly coveted professionals to help set up these new districts. And that's going to be a balancing act that all four districts, Alpine and the three new ones, are going to have to cooperate to have some kind of a balance between, yes, these people need to make sure that our current students are being very well served and our current staffs are being very well served, but we also need to hit the ground running on July 1st, 2027, and not pretend that we can start then. So I think that'll be incredible. That'll be a challenging opportunity.
All righty. Next question. How would you approach creating Aspen Peak's inaugural budget, and what factors should guide our financial planning process?
I think I kind of mentioned that a little bit before, but um, if you can't draw a direct line from a certain budget category to student or teacher success, then that needs to go to the bottom, right? That's maybe gravy or a cherry or something like that. If you can't draw a direct line to how this, like transportation, you can draw a direct line. Students have to be to school, right? Teachers, you can draw a direct line. Facilities, you can draw a direct line. So unless you can draw a direct line, it needs to just naturally go down. It doesn't mean you'll never get there, but start with those direct line things that directly impact our teachers' ability to teach and our students' ability to learn, and then kind of just go through that process of, the thicker, the bolder the line, the more important it needs to be at first, and then just kind of work your way down.
Okay. Next question is, how would you evaluate tax incentives and requests from development agencies, and what criteria should guide these decisions?
That's also a good question. I've long been one, having not grown up in Utah, I've long been one that has wondered why there aren't some kind of impact fees for developers. Um, and Utah is a very conservative, right, and low tax state. So um, I understand how, we want to have businesses thrive here, but it seems like if you're going to be a good partner with the community, if you're going to put in 200 homes, then there should be a mechanism that also helps you shoulder, right, other needs that will come along with those 200 or 300 homes that you're doing. So I think and I mean, this question is so good. I don't know how we do it in a minute, but I think you need to um, start there in one aspect, and maybe just see if our community is open to that. I know it hasn't been in the past, but are we open to that in the future, and seeing how we can try to cobble together some things. But to kind of put a finer point on it is you have to start with, are we maximizing what revenue we do have? Are we maximizing what revenue, see if you can find other ways to augment that revenue, but this is the revenue we have, like every family budget, this is what we've got. What can we cut out? What is necessary? What's necessary? What's nice to have? What's need to have? And that should always be at the top of our conversation before any additional public requests are made for funding and taxes.
Okay. Next is, how should we approach establishing district policies for Aspen Peaks, adopting existing frameworks or developing new ones, and what should guide this process?
Well, I think the current Alpine policy should serve as our starting point, right? A framework, and and then the interesting thing is our legislature is very active. I remember at one point comparing, Utah had 100 bills that impacted education, and a friend of mine that lives in Idaho was like, yeah, there were 8 this year, right? And so that in Utah in particular, compared to some of the other friends I have in the country, is a very legislatively active state for policy that impacts education. So Alpine has already done a lot of that work, and I think a lot of the policies are very solid and sturdy, and can be used as is or with some minor tweaking. So that's probably what I would say is, let's not reinvent everything, but let's scrutinize them one by one over time, and take what we have and then tweak those according to parent feedback, educator feedback, new opportunities, and also the legislation that comes our way, and tweak those. But I think Alpine's a great starting spot with the current policies they have, and then go from there.
All righty. Next one. What approach should the district take in establishing relationships with employee unions and negotiating collective bargaining agreements?
That's a great question. My personal opinion about unions is when a union that's voluntary and focused on their mission, there's a purpose, right? They provide some advocacy. They provide some a voice, a collective voice that is useful for a school board and a community to understand. But when unions start to drift off into other things that are at best um, only related to education on the margins, I think that's when not only do they get off task and off target, but that's I think where a lot of the frustration that comes with some of the unions is they're just wandering around in places that they shouldn't be. So I personally I have a great relationship with a current AEA. I hope that there will be three new um, um, unions that will represent their teachers and try to support their teachers and provide some input and clarity for us to consider as a school board. But I also think that they need to make sure that they keep a tight focus on helping educators and helping students and not getting into the weeds of some of these other issues that unions sometimes do.
Okay. Legislative relations. You kind of alluded to this a little bit before, but how should Aspen Peak School District engage with state legislators and position itself on educated related legislation?
Well, that'll be interesting too, because in all honesty, that was one of the benefits of having Alpine be 90,000 students and 12,000 employees, and two-thirds of a county is that power, right? That Alpine had. So it'll be interesting to see how three smaller districts, how we're able to develop relationships that aren't just collaborative with our legislators, but that they want to give credence to when we're kind of a little smaller fish in a big pond now. So that'll be a challenge for us to try to recreate some of the sway and influence that Alpine had with our legislators. But I mean, it starts with finding middle ground, right? What are some things we can agree on? What are some things that we can, how we attack those, we might have different ideas, but the value of that core principle or that topic that we're discussing, that's something we have in common and something that we can work towards, even if we have different ideas about how we might get there. But we're not gonna create friends by being adversarial and you know, so I think there needs to be concerted effort to develop those relationships, but it needs to start with finding common ground and being respectful, and have clarity of these are the things that are important to us. But that'll be a challenge for sure compared to what the kind of the standing Alpines had just due to their size. So
Okay. And how would you balance educator professional autonomy with community standards regarding classroom displays and teaching materials?
well, the state has given us some helpful guidance. They don't always do that. Um, and not everyone agrees necessarily with the guidance that they've given, but they have given some guidance about personal space in a classroom versus public spaces in a classroom. And so, what I would encourage our superintendent and those that kind of trickles down from there is we need to honor current law. If we don't like current law, let's work to see what can be done. But we need to honor current law, and that current law right now gives pretty helpful guidance that a principal can use to have a conversation with the teacher if private spaces are becoming public spaces. And so we need to follow policy, follow state law, and honor that as it currently stands, and then work to provide tweaks if we feel that's important. But yeah, follow the law, follow policy. It protects people.
Yeah. How should the district handle parent concerns about instructional material and library resources while maintaining educational quality?
Yeah, these are great questions, and there are some hot flashpoint questions as well. But public education partners with parents. We only get these students when parents agree to send them to us, right? We aren't out there collecting and gathering and skimming students and bringing them to us. Parents are voluntarily saying, "I want to partner with you," and what the state has clearly said is the parent's responsibility. And if a parent chooses to partner with a school district, fantastic. We think we can do it really well. But we always need to remember that a parent, it's their ultimate responsibility, and we need to honor and recognize that and provide a lot of leeway, I think, for a parent to say, "Hey, this is how I feel," but those conversations should be had reasonably with a parent and a principal and a teacher. Tell us about your concerns. How can we alleviate those concerns? What options do we have? It shouldn't just be, you can, a simple, waive from everything all the time, anytime you want. Let's have a discussion first, and then let's work together to see how we can sort that out. But yeah, we need to remember the preeminence of parents sharing their kids with us.
Next question is similar to that. What approach should the district take regarding health education curriculum and material selection?
Uh, Well, I served on the committee with several parents and school nurses and a board member that helped to write the policy about the fifth grade maturation curriculum, and it was awesome having parents on there. It was great getting feedback. I personally, just because it was part of my job description, I would sub for those. I've done dozens of maturation presentations myself. And it was always nice to get parent feedback. Every time we went, there was a QR code. Parent could come in, give their feedback about, "Hey, I love this. This was great. This part seemed like the present, whether it was me or somebody else, we would get things about that seemed like the presenter was unsure, or it seemed like the presenter swayed into things that it might have been better to just say, "Hey, that's a good question for your parent, to ask your parent." So having been on the front lines, having done many of them myself, it was awesome to get parent feedback about, "This was too much. This was not enough. Can you consider, might you consider this, or could you please improve some of the training that the presenters are doing, or things of that nature." So it's great. Parent feedback is amazing, and we should honor it.
Next question has to do with civic education. What role should civic education and constitutional studies play in our curriculum, and how can we best prepare our students for citizenship?
Yeah, I think one of the ways to think about it is, one of the great things about public school isn't that they're just available to the public. It's that they're places of publicness. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but they're places where you learn how to be in public, right? For most of our kids, it's their first real foray into, all right, I've kind of got some autonomy to work in this space at school. That's my first real um, public experience, right? With people, a variety of ways of thinking, being, and expressing themselves. And so I think that's one of the great things about public school is it's not only can we and should we engage in direct civics and history and constitutional studies, but it's also a laboratory where you can just look around and see, "I like the way those people interact. I don't think that's a good way of interacting." And from the time that they come into the school, they see that all the time, both examples and non-examples of positive civic engagement. And so I think we should definitely have direct, purposeful civics education. But I also think one of the great things about public education is that just that being immersive experience of seeing how people treat each other, and what you want, how you want to, whose model do you want to follow,
Yeah.
and how that happens.
Okay. Next question is, how would you approach decisions about graduation requirements and academic standards to best serve our students' college and career readiness?
Yeah. So, um, that's a K-12 thing, right? A lot of people think that's just a high school thing, and accreditation and all that kind of stuff. But that's a K-12, and in many ways it's a K-22, right? Or whatever number you want to pick. But it starts in kindergarten, and those skills build upon themselves. And now that I'm here at BYU working in the McKay School of Education with student teachers and cohorts and all those, and the kids that are getting ready to go out and be the next generation of teachers, it all builds on itself. Um, so specifically to graduation requirements, they should be robust and they should be clear and straightforward. But one of the things that can really help is starting in that seventh grade and eighth grade, having those college and career readiness, and also the parent teacher conferences aren't just about, how my students doing in this class. It's how, what kind of study skills, what kind of um, dispositions are they developing or lacking that are going to serve them just as much in that college readiness as any knowledge they have. What skills and dispositions do they have, and are we serving those properly as they go through that seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th? But again, if you don't think about those knowledge, skills, and dispositions in K6, then they're going to start a little bit behind. So, I mean, that's another question that we could talk about for a whole lot more than a minute. But I think there's the knowledge piece and the skills and dispositions piece, both of which will need to be solid for a student to have success in that post-secondary.
Okay. Next question is, how should the district respond to state policies regarding charter schools and school choice programs that may impact enrollment and funding?
You know what? Education options are awesome. Within a district, you want to have educational variety and options and things that are available to the parents, whether that's an alternative high school or online credits. I mean, we want, as public educators, to have options within our own entity. Why would we not support opportunities for other sorts of parental choice, right? And student choice and how they do things. Now, that being said, there needs to be parity in how that works, and a parity in funding, parity in expectations for both a charter school and a public school. So I remember talking with quite a few parents over the years, as 14 years as a principal. If you're at a school that treats your kid well and they communicate good with you about what's going on, and they have solid educational outcomes, that's a great school. I don't care if it's public or private or charter. If they communicate, they treat your child well, and they're working towards academic outcomes, that's a great place for your kiddo to be. But from the larger question is, but there needs to be parity in funding and parity in expectations. Otherwise, it's apples and oranges. So,
Okay. Second to last question, what role should trade skills and technical education play in our district's offerings, and how would you expand these opportunities?
yeah, I love that. I have direct family members that they are thriving in that kind of an M-Tech kind of a setting and loving it. And it has been an eye-opening and almost like a education saving experience for them, right? Instead of I'm no good at school and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, and I don't think I don't want to go to college. I don't know if I can handle college. Going and kind of seeing that, hey, there's another avenue here, and that there's another avenue that can lead to success and confidence. So yes, I love that we're growing and kind of expanding that that trade skill kind of a avenue, and I hope we continue to do that, and not just um, have it feel like if I don't make it to college, then I'm not a success. That's should not be the case. There's a lot of ways to have success in this great country, and we should provide opportunities and encourage that.
All righty. And the last question we have is kind of an open forum for you. 1 minute to say whatever you'd like and appeal to voters here as we kind of close out.
Well, I think there's two things that maybe would make me a great representative for our community. Number one, I love people. I'm a people person. I'm fairly affable, and I don't get upset, and I just enjoy rubbing shoulders. I enjoy solving problems. I enjoy meeting with people. You meet people sometimes that feel drained after a while in public, and there's like, oh, my social battery's dead. I get recharged. That's why I went into education. I love being with people, love rubbing shoulders, love solving problems, helping figure things out. That kind of amps me up, and so I think I've got some dispositions and some personality attributes that would be a positive play a positive role on a school board. I think the second thing is I've been a teacher. I've been an assistant principal. I've been a principal. I've been a district administrator. I'm a parent. I know from the granular level of preparing lesson plans for a substitute all the way to a district level, having been a director in student services of um, schools, things that work well, things that don't work well sometimes, things that should be honored, and things that I think there's room for discussion there. And so I think just that kind of deep knowledge base, again, from everything from the class, all the way from that classroom to a district level. I've also opened a school, right? And so I've created a school from scratch, right? And so I have a lot of educational experience there will be some things I'll need to learn as a board member for sure, but what an IP is, what 504 is, how does a family get a service animal, what does a threat assessment look like? What is a school disciplinary hearing? What does that mean? When do we do those? What's the school budget like? What does a teacher need to succeed? I mean, I've seen all of those things intimately, and so I think that's an asset for me. So yeah.
Okay. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and wish you the best of success in the upcoming election.
You bet. I love my community. AF's a great place to live, and I hope that in some small way I can serve and keep AF being a great place to live. So
Great. Well, thank you.